If you listen to the show, you already know that we cannot exist without our sponsors. They are the ones who make things happen behind the scenes. So let's acknowledge Fuji Sports. We've been working with these guys for a while now, not only as far as this podcast is concerned, but also at the RŌL Academy. We've had their gear. I personally use their gis. What a phenomenal product.
Yeah, I mean, Jiu Jitsu, Judo, MMA, tape, bags, anything you need for your Jiu Jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Let's talk RŌL TV. There's so much content on there. It's ridiculous at this point. But I think what is even more intriguing, as time went on during the project, we've been recording most of the events that were taking place here at RŌL Academy. At this point, I mean, we have guys like Chris Howder, Armin Fati, Rafael Lovato Sr., and Pete the Greek. I mean, there are so many different events that we've kind of recorded it. Don't you think that's amazing? I mean, points of reflection and kind of going back for all the students to see what really happened and refresh their memory.
Yeah, I think it's great, you know, being able to go back and look at all these high-level practitioners, Octavio Cudo, like one of the names you didn't mention. And I mean, just these guys that have been doing this for so long come in, teach these amazing seminars and workshops, and it's all recorded and there for you to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get additional savings on all this, type in code RŌL Radio at the coupon and get additional 30% off of your membership.
Nice. Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. Today's guest has come a long way from learning how to fight in his father's barn to training at two of the most respected academies in California and becoming a fight-to-win champion. On this episode of the RŌL Radio, Sloan Clymer shares incredible stories of watching his father fight in that barn, learning to fight in that barn himself, the wonderful and inspirational relationship he has with his father, his plans for the future, and his love of coffee. Here's the RŌL Radio with Legion American Jiu Jitsu instructor, Jiu Jitsu X collaborator, and Fight to Win heavyweight champion, Sloan the Caveman Clymer.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live.
We are. We're back, right?
Once again,
everything's red. Everything's going.
Everything is going. Yeah,
Beautiful.
life is good.
All right, cool.
Yeah. How you like your mug?
My RŌL Radio mug?
Yeah. You put it under the table? Seriously?
Well, there's nothing in it. Why keep it on the table?
It took me like literally 30 seconds to do this.
If anybody can see that. But get yours now on our website that doesn't exist. Well, the website exists, but you can't buy anything. But instead of mugs, let's talk about something else. Where were you last week?
Oh, yeah, Boston.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in Boston. What were you doing there?
I hung out with Bernardo.
Again?
Yeah.
I can't believe he keeps asking you back.
You know, some people like me, actually.
Yeah?
Unlike you.
Well,
some people enjoy my company.
He only sees you once, like every 4 months. I see you like once every 4 hours.
No, it was a good trip. Yeah, we shot more instructionals. We hung out. It was a good time.
Cool.
So,
and you did a bunch, right? You didn't just go do one this time. You did
a
few?
You it's interesting, like, as you go through these projects, because, you know, last time I did 2 and this time I did 3, and they were long too, and it was they were long days, you know. Props go I gotta give props to Dom, you know, who did travel with me, you know, who helped out a lot, and he was there as my designated you know, mandatory uki
punching bag.
Yeah, so but it was a good time. So yeah, I don't have the exact release date yet, but those will be coming out next few weeks. So there's 3 new instructionals that will come out. So,
awesome.
You know, if you like what we do, check them out as always. So
yeah. That's exciting. Good for you. Good for you. All right, we're gonna get started.
Well, thanks
here?
for not burning this place down, by the way.
I did my best. Last time you left, it flooded. So, but I almost blamed your kid for that because he was the last one in the bathroom. And then there was just water everywhere.
Yeah, well, you know, if you're gonna blame somebody, blame my child.
I will,
you know?
for sure. If that's as close as I get to blaming you, I'll blame him.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this.
Let's bring our guest into the show, Caveman. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right, man. Things are going well.
Thanks for dropping in, and thanks for having this conversation with us. First of all, let's start with the important things. I'm hearing a rumor that you're a big fan of coffee.
Yes, it's true.
And I hear that you're a fan of strong coffee. Define what strong coffee means. Like, it seems like a very specific item here.
Well, I have like a very casual sponsorship with Death Wish Coffee.
Oh, nice.
Basically, give me free coffee, and I have their logos on a lot of my competition shorts. And that's pretty much it. I tag them in some of my posts on Instagram from time to time. But Death Wish Coffee, if you aren't aware of that, it's they say it's like one of the world's strongest coffees. It's just that the caffeine content, for whatever, it's condensed. So like, your average cup of coffee that you would brew that might have like 95 to maybe 100 milligrams of caffeine in it, Death Wish, I would say, has more like 150 a cup. You know what I mean? And so I'll drink like 2 cups of those to get my morning started. Yeah. Or, my girlfriend and I decide to go to a coffee shop, which we do that a lot. That's just like, we love coffee so much. It's a way that we love to start our day. We did it this morning. We went to Spill the Beans in downtown San Diego, and I ordered a quad shot latte.
Quad shot?
Yeah, quad.
Like 4
shots, yeah.
Good for you.
Gary, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Gary, can you imagine if I had that amount of coffee first thing in the morning?
I think it would be fun. That would be fun. I would love to see that.
I bounce off the walls when I have mine, and it's milk, half with milk, and all the other stuff.
That's maybe I'll stop making fun of you for the way you drink it since you bring that up. But Thomas is like a 4 milk, 4 sugar.
No. There's no sugar. No, there's no sugar. There's milk. I like my foam. I like milk. All that.
Any sweet.
Say again.
Do you use like stevia or any kind of artificial sweetener?
No, typically milk and maybe some flavor, like either like maybe hazelnuts or like it's something to just flavor it a little bit. But depending on what coffee. But like at home, I don't do any of that. Just I just like lattes. I like the foam stuff. You know what I mean? Call me whatever you want. Make fun of me. I don't care. I like it. I have my espresso machine. It's like my routine every morning. I spend good like 15 minutes doing things. It's my thing. Okay.
I won't take that away from you.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I love making my coffee in the morning. Yeah, I'm not one of those people who judges off of like how people like their coffee. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, it's awesome. I have an espresso machine as well. I haven't used it in a while though. I actually just brew my coffee at home in a regular pot, and I just drink it black when I'm at home. But then when I go out to coffee shops in the morning, that's when I get my latte.
I will have to say to both of you, this was your opportunity to make fun of me in front of an international audience.
Yeah,
you guys ruined.
Well,
this.
he wasn't.
You had one in a lifetime chance.
I got the feeling that he wasn't going to pile on, so I let it go. But yeah, the morning routine's important. I know if my wife is getting breakfast or lunches together for the kids, and she's standing in front of the coffee pot, and I'm just like, I don't say anything, but it's you can hear my toes tapping on the floor. It's like, come on, hurry up, get out of the way. Yeah. So it is important. Those morning rituals are very important.
Yeah. Get the morning started. So, before we start recording, you were at the studio where you guys record the videos, right? I know you have like very elaborate stand as far as the camera is concerned. Is there a way you can pick it up and show us what's going on behind you?
Sure. Yeah. So
I don't want to ruin your setup.
No. Well, I have a coffee cup that I'm resting my phone on.
That's why I said comprehensive stand.
So this is the entry. You walk in. We got one of the editing computers, a couch to hang out on. Here's the cameras right here. I just have a lamp on right now, so not all the light. I could actually turn the lights on if you guys want me to, real quick, so you guys can get a better view of this. Here it is.
There it is. This is the spot where Jiu Jitsu X gets shot.
If you can see the like white out, like curved wall right there, that's just so that you don't see the corners when we're shooting. It looks like you're just in a white, like floating in space almost.
That's pretty cool.
So pretty cool. Fortunate to have this.
Yeah, good for you guys. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks for the inside view. Not many people see that part.
Yeah.
So listen, you're from Midwest.
Yep.
Born in the Midwest, somewhere around in Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Indiana. Sure.
Yeah. What? How was your beginning of your life living in the Midwest?
Okay, so I was born in a small town in Indiana called Anderson. This is where I was born and raised. And my dad was like a huge martial arts enthusiast my entire life. I remember being like a little boy and watching boxing with him, and he trained a lot too. And he was kind of involved in the early days of MMA when it was still like this underground thing that was going on. A lot of small towns are starting to hold cage fights, and my dad actually fought in one of them. He fought in this like unsanctioned cage fight event, and he had already known how to box. He had wrestled throughout high school and stuff like that, done a little bit of karate, and he had a fight with a guy and he got armbarred. This was shortly after UFC 1, I think. So,
okay, so that's like 90s. Okay.
Yeah, this was the 90s, and so my dad had heard about jiu-jitsu. He had seen Royce Gracie in UFC 1, but he had not trained. And then he got armbarred by this guy in this fight, and he was like, "Man, I gotta learn this stuff." And he got into some contact. He got into contact with some people, and he started like hopping around different places in Indiana and started training jiu-jitsu. And he started buying VHS tapes and watching them with his friends and drilling. And so we had this garage in my old house with like weights and stuff. And my dad was always lifting weights. We always had our own like home gym. And then when we moved a little bit more out in the country, he had a barn built in my backyard. I would have been about 7 years old at this time or something. And basically, so he could move all of his weights into this barn. And he also put a mat space in the back. And that's where he and his friends would get together on the weekends, and they would spar. They would do boxing, jiu-jitsu rounds, everything. They would lift weights together. And, he tried involved.
Frame this in for us. In the 90s, there cannot be many places to teach jiu-jitsu. Let alone Indiana. Like Indiana, Illinois, we are Midwest. We are like freaking the last freaking corner of the world where jiu-jitsu appears, right? Even today. Like the saturation is very small. Like where is he training?
So there were no classes. He wasn't going to any classes. He would go to this was like a common thing in Indiana. There would be groups of guys and like in a barn or in a high school wrestling room or somewhere in a random warehouse where mats were. My dad would go. He had friends who had contacts with these different little training sessions that were going on, and he would hop around these different gyms and train with these guys, and they would do it all. They would do boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. They were basically just doing MMA training. And then when we moved into our new house when I was like 6 years old, he had a little barn built in the backyard, like a cheap just pole barn, and had mats put in kind of like at the back of it. It's still there to this day. And he started holding like pretty much all of his training sessions there every weekend. And, when I was little, he tried getting me into wrestling. I wrestled from like age 6 to 8, I think. He had me in a wrestling club, but I just like wanted to ride my bike and skateboard. I didn't, for whatever reason, it was like too structured for me. I didn't really care to learn all the rules of wrestling. And it was always, I remember just being perpetually confused when I was in those wrestling classes. But I liked fighting. I liked watching fights with him. I always thought it was cool. He taught me how to do a rear naked choke when I was like 6 years old. And I was a menace with the rear naked choke. I would like run playground, just like choking them with rear naked chokes. I remember my oldest sister, she had a boyfriend who came over, and he was like, so he would have been like 8 or 9 years older than me. I probably was 8 years old at the time. And my mom was like, Sloan's really good at choking people. And he was like, what? No way. And she was like, if you let him get on your neck, he would put you to sleep. And like 8-year-old kid, he goes, okay, go ahead. Like put me in whatever choke you want. And I put him in a rear naked choke. And I just squeezed super hard, and he almost went out, but he started like panic tapping basically and was coughing a bunch. And that's just a funny little memory of one of my many times I used the rear naked chokes long before I was even doing jiu-jitsu, you know?
So the big question is, did he stick around with your sister, or did he run?
So man, that's a whole other story. So they actually broke up shortly after. And then like years later, I not to get too personal or anything, but they became like drug addicts together. They're like still to this day, I think they're involved. I don't really talk to my sister much anymore. They got like addicted to meth, those two, and it's crazy. But in between those times, my sister got married to someone else and had 2 children who my niece and nephew, I'm still very involved with. But then she got a divorce, ended up back with that same guy that I choked when I was a little kid. And now those two are, they got problems now.
Well, so like at that point, way back in the day, right? So you're talking about you 9, 8, somewhere around that time, you're finding your dad is finding these little training camps, for lack of a better word, just places where guys train. Paint a visual here. Is there some kind of instruction associated with this, as far as this is the system, we are trying to learn striking, distance control, blah, 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 we take into the ground, or this is just a bunch of guys who just love pounding each other and we just get together and we how does this look?
It leaned more towards that. I think there was a lot more of just like, that's how it was back in the days. Like it was just meathead training. Like everyone was pretty much each other up, but I'd have to ask him because I was so young. I remember going to the training sessions with him, and he would I would bring my action figures and I would sit off to the side of these mats, like in a high school wrestling room, or like I said, in some random barn somewhere, or at the Anderson Pal Club. It was a boxing club. They would go there sometimes and they would be training jiu-jitsu and boxing and stuff on the weekends. And, but I think most of it was like hard sparring, hard rolling. Sometimes they would chill out and drill some stuff. But yeah, I think it was like a lot of like meathead style training. You know what I mean?
Sometimes that's the best part of it, right? But yeah. So, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it appears to me that at that point of your life, training is not a priority. Like you engage with it by default. You know, your dad takes you. It seems like you have a good relationship, between you two, and that's part of your life. But training itself is not a priority. You're not engaging much. Am I on a good track?
No, I never I would watch my dad and his friends. Like I would get bored when I would go to these training sessions with him. And I would just watch him and his friends spar each other, whether they were, a lot of times when they were doing jiu-jitsu rounds, it was like ground and pound rounds. Like they had gloves on and they were hitting each other too.
Right.
And so, yeah, I watched a lot of that when I was younger. And I remember sometimes like seeing guys like get mad, and it was interesting seeing that, like seeing like temper tantrums and stuff. He trained with this one guy who was like really crazy. Like this dude was, some of the guys were, ex-cons, and then there'd be police officers in there training in the same group. Here, tension and, but yeah, it was a weird environment. I myself though, I just didn't really find it interesting until I got to be about like 15 years old.
So let's talk about that now. So like there's no interest. It's part of your life, but clearly the training is not interest, priority, and so on. But obviously at some point it has become an interest since you do this for a living now, right? So it's like the life has literally flipped 180 degrees. And now you literally, live, breathe, this is it. At which point, like, points the single event or single day in which you're like, boom, jiu-jitsu is it.
Okay. So when I was, like I said, he tried getting me into wrestling. I did that for a couple of years. And then he even tried getting me into like a judo club at one point. I didn't really care for that. But like I said, I loved watching fighting. And I like when a fist fight would come on during a movie or something, my eyes were just glued to the screen. I always thought fighting was really exciting. And I would get in fights with kids on the playground and stuff too. And I would always I had that, I feel like I had an ego from a very young age. Like I wanted to win fights and I wanted to know that I could beat other little kids up on the playground. And then, I carried that through, all of high school and everything. But then once I got to be about 14, I'll never forget this. I had a friend who, it's like, of the two of us, we hung around each other a lot, but it was always kind of an unspoken thing that I was like the tough guy and he wasn't so much the tough guy. But he was a big, strong football player, but I was the one who was kind of a little bit meaner and I was more willing to get in fights with people. So it's like, in an unspoken way, I was supposed to be the tougher one of the two of us. Well, we wrestled in his living room one day and he threw me down and he held me down. And I could not get him off of me. It was like playful. We weren't mad at each other, but I remember just not being able. And like I said, I was supposed to be the tougher one, but this kid could just manhandle me. He threw me down, and then he did it again. He threw me down. And he just held me down. I could not get this kid off me, and I was like so embarrassed about it. I went home that night. My dad was lifting weights in the barn. I walked out there and I said, "Dad, how do I get somebody off of me?" I was like, I was hanging out with Cody earlier today and we wrestled in his living room and he just like held me down. I couldn't get him off me. And my dad was like, well, there's this thing called shrimping. And he said, let me just show you it on the mats real quick. He was like, it's a pretty simple answer. He's like, here, go ahead. He was like, how was he on top of you? And I basically explained side control without understanding that was what it was called. So I was like, well, he's on top of me like this. He had his chest on me and I couldn't do anything. He's like, okay, so you want to get your frames and this is going to help you create space. And he said, I'll never forget the way he explained it. He was like, what you pretty much want to do is push him a little bit one way while you push yourself a little bit in the opposite direction. And that's going to help you get out from under him. He's like, you can't just try to push someone straight off you. You have to go one way while he goes the other. And so he had me start practicing shrimping. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like my dad had a specific answer right then and there. He didn't have to like brainstorm or think, you know what I mean? Put much thought into it. He knew exactly what needed to happen. So right there, I was like, man, there's something to this jiu-jitsu stuff that my dad does. That's really cool. And so then I started inviting friends over to my barn. And we would go out into my barn after school and we would like put on boxing gloves and just beat each other up, or we would grapple. And I remember my dad would always tell me, hey, don't go out into the barn without me. Like I want to be able to supervise you and, you know what I mean, make sure no one's getting hurt. But I did it anyways. I knew where he hid the key to his barn. He hid it in his closet. I would go out there. I'd grab his key, unlock the barn, and me and my friends would go. I held fights back there. He still to this day doesn't know it. He's going to watch this episode and
we should bring him on.
I would literally, if two kids had beef at school, I would let them come over to my house after school and fist fight each other in my barn on the mats. And at one point, I remember like 30 kids came over and watched these two kids fight. And so it just became like a part of my everyday thing after school. I would go home from school. I'd go out in the barn with my friends. We'd beat each other up. Sometimes we would see a move on YouTube and drill it, you know, like the Americana. I remember me and one of my friends going over that. And then my dad caught me going out to the barn and he was like, man, you seem to want to do this stuff. He said, why don't you just start training with me and my friends on the weekends? He would hold training sessions every Saturday and Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on the dot. He would have like 6 to 8 guys that would show up to the barn and they would train. And so I decided to just jump in there with him one day. And I remember we boxed a little bit and we grappled a little bit, and we did a bunch of strength and conditioning. And I was so sore the next day. So I was 15 years old at this time.
So,
but I loved it.
Going back to that day in the Cody's living room.
Yeah.
Would you consider that day or that moment as a pivotal point in your life?
I think so. Yeah. I think that was just what sparked my interest in learning jiu-jitsu, was that specific moment of getting held down by him.
Walk me through the train of thought. What is happening in that moment? Cody's on top of you. You're the tougher guy. You're the dude. It's supposed to be the upside down. You're supposed to be on top, or you at least should be moving him. Yet, you can't. I feel like so many students find themselves in that position, especially at the beginning of their journey when they're exploring jiu-jitsu, when they're exploring grappling, even wrestling, right? It's like the ultimate point of feeling powerless almost.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind? Like, go back in time and walk me through this.
Man, I just remember him being like chest to chest on top of me. And I was thinking, if I just explode, I can get him off me. And I kept trying, and I don't know what, I was probably bucking my hips. I was just doing everything. And I was just like, and he just held me there. And I was thinking, how the hell is this guy holding me down? This isn't this is not supposed to work like this. You know, I couldn't believe it. I remember I was just so bamboozled afterward. I was so puzzled by it. I was like, how did he just hold me there? He just held, I did feel kind of powerless. And it was like an ego check. Yeah, it hurt my feelings. I remember he got up and we kind of like laughed it off or whatever. But I remember it really stung. Like, it just hurt here. You know what I mean? I was like, gosh, I can't believe that my friend, who I thought I could probably beat up pretty easily, was able to hold me down like that. And it stung so bad. And I was like, I have to figure out some kind of answer for this. I can't let that happen again.
Afterwards, have you trained with Cody afterwards? Have you guys had a quote unquote rematch?
No, he never got into it. The guy was just he was just a kid who liked playing sports, and I don't even know what that guy's doing anymore. I haven't talked to him in years, but yeah,
super fight.
So you go from there to the barn. I'm assuming at this point the training's a little bit more formal in the barn than it was when your dad first started. And then when do you start really going to formal jiu-jitsu classes? Okay,
so I started training with my dad and his buddies and his training crew when I was 15. I started doing those weekend sessions with him, like every Saturday and Sunday morning. And throughout the week, my dad would like hold mitts for me sometimes. And maybe sometimes he would roll around with me a little bit after he got off work. We would go in the barn. He might show me a couple of things here and there. But then, so when I was 17, I went to this gym called the Iron Horse. It was in a town over from my hometown, Pendleton, Indiana. The Iron Horse is a small MMA/Taekwondo gym. And so I just went in there one day. My sister lived near that gym, and I was like, I'm just going to go and just see, what it costs to train there. And I talked to the owner. His name's Myron Gerber. He still owns the gym to this day. And he was like, yeah, it's, you can pay per session, $5 a session, or it's like, $50 a month or something like that. I can't remember. And so I went there that next weekend with my dad. I was 17 at this point. And it was like a crazy strength and conditioning training session. And then he literally just had us all like roll afterward. So we did crazy strength and conditioning training, and then like 3 rounds of grappling. There was no instruction or anything. And then I went back that next Tuesday because he would have Tuesday, Thursday sessions. And I remember drilling. We did like mitt work for a little bit, and then we drilled Kimuras. This is still pretty informal training. I can't really say this was like, it's like Myron. I think he was technically, and probably still is technically, a white belt in jiu-jitsu. Like the guy's been in the sport for a long time, but he never actually got belted in jiu-jitsu. You know, he was more of a type of guy, and he would just teach a little bit of jiu-jitsu also in his MMA classes. So I did that for, a couple years.
At which point does it become serious? At which point in your life, jiu-jitsu becomes your life?
Okay, so I trained like on and off for those next few years. I wrestled my senior year in high school again. I circled back around to it. I was like, okay, my training partners at the Iron Horse were telling me, you're going to be a senior in high school. You should take advantage of that and wrestle, like learn something new. You know what I mean? That's just going to make you a better fighter. And I knew I wanted to fight. And so I wrestled my senior year of high school. And at this point, I'd already done a couple jiu-jitsu tournaments too. When I was 16, my dad signed me up for my first jiu-jitsu tournament. And I knew I loved it. Like I thought it was awesome. I loved jiu-jitsu. I loved fighting. I thought it was great. And, but then I would go to these tournaments with my dad, and I would see guys wearing the gi, and I never put on a gi before. I didn't even know. I was like, Dad, what are they doing in the gi? And my dad was like, well, jiu-jitsu, it's actually primarily a sport in the gi, but guys also like to do no gi too. And so for my 20th birthday, I asked my dad for a gi for my birthday. He bought me a gameness gi. I still have it to this day. And I went up to Fisher's Jiu-Jitsu and Boxing. That's a gym in another town near where I grew up. And I trained in a jiu-jitsu class there. And that was my first like formal jiu-jitsu class.
How was the difference in your head between what you've done up to this point, right? So you have quite a bit of experience at this point.
Yeah.
There was some wrestling, there was some obviously, grappling, and then you entering this more formal environment. Uniform is involved. It appears like there's a more formal class structure and so on. What's the biggest difference in your mind?
Yeah, it was really formal. I wasn't sure if I really liked that at first. I was like, I don't know. It was just weird for me to go and, tie on this belt, you know what I mean? And then, and to drill all these like set of techniques. I had never done a class that was that extensive on drilling techniques. So that was kind of a weird thing for me. I didn't mind it though. I don't think. I thought it was kind of cool. But I didn't sign up at that gym. I planned on it, and then I was just like, no, I don't feel like signing up. And shortly after that, I got invited by these guys who trained a little bit of MMA. I got invited to go up to American Top Team in Indianapolis, and they were letting me go up there and train for free. They weren't asking me for any money, and so I would go up there and I would do the jiu-jitsu class, and it was gi for the first hour and then no gi for the second hour. So I started doing that every Wednesday. And at this point too, I'm kind of skipping over some stuff, but I had already competed in jiu-jitsu tournaments, like at least like 5 or 6 tournaments. I had already wrestled in high school, and I had an MMA fight at this point. I had one MMA fight. Which I had won. So, and then
let's dig a little bit deeper here. There was a lot of guys particularly, but girls too, who have wrestling and grappling experience from other areas outside of jiu-jitsu, right? And then naturally at some point they often breach over to the jiu-jitsu dark side, if you will. And most of the time, not always, but most of the time, they are introduced to the gi, to the little bit more formal instruction. It's kind of they entering the system, if you will, quote unquote, right? Which we typically see around jiu-jitsu. And oftentimes that creates this, I don't know if friction is the word that I'm looking for, but it's like the little conflict, right? Like I have already know some of this stuff. Is not the official stuff, but it's the informal stuff. And yet now I need to kind of sort of learn from the beginning. And it sounds like you kind of went through a similar thing.
Oh man.
What is like, yeah. So what is like what is the biggest benefit for individuals who have some casual experience, or maybe not even casual? I'm talking about like even wrestlers. We have some phenomenal wrestling guys here, right? And they are just starting jiu-jitsu. And like some of them, they can demolish me, right? They can destroy me, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily know jiu-jitsu, right? And they have to go through this learning curve, which oftentimes is, it's challenging. Like you got to put yourself in this vulnerable situation of being able to receive the information that you don't know yet, right? Did you find that transition hard, difficult for yourself?
Not really. For some specific techniques, I found it challenging. Mm-hmm. There were a couple things that like you have to like train out of yourself if you develop like a bad habit. Like we've all seen the white belts in our gym go for the schoolyard like headlock instead of getting the hook when they're in side control, right?
Right.
I had to go through, I wanted to squeeze the head so bad. When someone's in bottom half guard and they start coming up into dogfight, what are we supposed to do? We should get a whizzer, right? Mm-hmm. Well, me, I just wanted to grab the head. I just wanted to grab everyone's head and squeeze on it all the time because my dad told me at a pretty young age. I mean, once I started training with him when I was 15 or something, he would always tell me, just attack the neck. He's like, the neck's the most vulnerable part of the body, just attack, get everything else, just go for the neck all the time. And so I would literally go for the neck all the time. I mean, it's funny because it kind of shaped me into who I am right now. Still do that, but I think I do it a little bit more efficiently now. But yeah, it's like doing silly things like that I had. And I remember, an instructor telling me like, hey man, you need to get the underhook when you're in side control, grabbing the head. They're just going to get out and take your back every single time. And I was like, damn, I don't want to get the underhook. I want the head, Why can't it work? I have their head in my armpit squeezing on it. How can't this work right now? I got to make this work. And then eventually I was like, okay, you know what? I need to just start getting the underhook because now I've got my back taken 20 times and gotten choked, So
let me ask you this. Now you're an instructor. You teach now, right? And you're on the other side of the mat, right? Why are we so stubborn when it comes to learning new things? Like, why do we want to squeeze the hell out of the head, even though everybody around us tells us, don't do it, just go under, just get the whizzer and you're going to stop. Like, why? Why do we want to be why we are so stuck in our ways?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it is just, for me, it was what I was kind of told. I wasn't told specifically from these positions to do that, but I was told to go after the neck. And I think it's just like, especially when it comes to grabbing people's heads, that's like in our instincts, like our human instincts is to grab someone's head and squeeze on it. Right. So it's like, it's hard to take that out and go, okay, this guy knows more than me. He's better. He's been doing this longer. I got to do the right technique if I want to be able to control this other person. But in those early days, squeezing the head feels like the right thing to do, So, I mean, that's my best answer. I don't know. People are stubborn, you got to learn the hard way. You can't sometimes just being told to get the underhook or to get the whizzer when you're in dogfight or whatever. It's not enough. You got to get your back taken, 5 or 6 or 20 times and get choked for you to go, okay, this keeps happening. Let's try this out and see if that works instead.
So from learning perspective, are you a fan of telling students what to do, or do you prefer allowing them to experiment in a sense and allow them to fail and experience that this just wasn't their route to go. What's your philosophy on that?
I tell them, obviously, when I see bad technique or I see something that's like, it's clearly a mistake that one of my white belts is making, or even a blue or purple belt, I'll tell them my insight and go, hey, this is why. I want to explain to you why this won't work. And I had to learn this the hard way. And, you might have to learn it the hard way too. You know what I mean? You might have to do this 20 more times to realize that it doesn't work. But I can tell you that there's a good chance you're never going to make this work. Like getting a headlock when you're in side control and just trying to squeeze on it. It's probably never going to work once you roll with somebody who's at a higher level. So, but I also tell them, I try to be as, like lenient with my students as possible. I tell them, look, if you have something that you think works and maybe I don't agree with you, do it anyway. It's like, I can't tell you what to do, and you might make something work that I didn't think could work. And then, and then I'm proved wrong. Jiu-jitsu, it's like, it's never ending, dude. There's guys who's that? Alexei Olenek in the UFC. Mm-hmm. You guys know?
Yep. Yeah.
Guy Ezekiel chokes people from bottom mount. From bottom out, this guy lets people get on top of him, and I mean, maybe doesn't let them, but he has choked like I think 2 different people in the UFC from bottom out within Ezekiel. That's bad technique going for a choke from bottom out, but he's made it work at the highest level of the MMA. So it's like, I can't tell you don't ever do something because it might work.
Well, I think that's the interesting part about jiu-jitsu in general, that there's a lot of room for interpretation, and it's relative to the person and the circumstance they find themselves in. Like, you look at worlds, gi, no gi, every year there is somebody there. It was like, how the hell did he even pull that off? That doesn't make any sense. Like, logically, they're just, this is not supposed to work. And yet, they are just going right through it, right? Because, they have developed an expertise in this unique quote-unquote system that they have, and yet circumstances they are surrounded by allow them to execute this, right? And like what you were talking about, who in the world will be reaching for the neck when you're on the bottom of top mount? Like, there's like the biggest no-nos in the world, right? Like every instructor, if they had a bamboo stick, they'd be walking around and just snapping your wrists. Like, what are you thinking, right? And yet there are people who do it, right? And they do it successfully. So I always find jiu-jitsu is an art. It's a room for interpretation for all of us, and
I think
I don't know where I was going.
Well,
with
you need to. I think you need those fundamentals first, and then maybe go back to that stuff.
Yeah,
maybe. It's like I was watching BJJ After 40, Mike. He was doing some about lapel stuff from somebody's guard, inside their guard. And it's like, well, if you're new and you're in their guard and you're reaching your arms way out, something bad's going to happen. But Mike knows what to do, right?
He got some wicked stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, keep that in your toolbox, but don't do it so much when you're a white or a blue belt, because then you're going to get caught.
And then who the hell knows? By the time we are 80 or 70 or 80, these guys who are white belts now, they're going to be coming out with some wicked stuff. So, I mean, this is part of the evolution of jiu-jitsu. It appears to me like you had, or perhaps still have, very good relationship with your dad. Is that?
Oh, yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. Me and my dad, we love each other. We still talk on the phone a lot. He lives back in Indiana, but he actually came out last month, in December, for the first time in like over 4 years. And he hadn't even seen Legion yet. He had never actually walked into Legion, the academy I'm teaching at. And so it was nice for him to see that and hang out with me for the week. He got to watch me teach classes and stuff. And I brought him up in front of one of my classes and introduced him, as the man who got it all started for me.
Does he still engage in jiu-jitsu?
No, he's just, my dad is, he's getting older, and he's got a lot of injuries. Yeah. replacement. He still lifts weights all the time. He's still jacked. He's like way more jacked than I am. It's funny because it's like I'm his son. I'm 30 years old. I'm probably in like, maybe the best shape of my life. And I stand next to this guy. His arms and shoulders are like twice. Ridiculous. But yeah, so he still lifts weights in his barn. I think he still hits the heavy bag a little bit and stuff, but he doesn't roll anymore.
Did you have the conversation with him when he came out and he visited Legion for the first time and watch you run a class? Like, what is his, like, listen, he has to be proud. Like, I don't,
Sure.
Like, did you guys talk about that? Like
Yeah, well, I don't think he ever, I mean, I don't want to say my dad doubted me because I don't think he doubted me, but he, when I was younger, he wanted me to play it safe with my life. He wanted, I was a correctional officer for a couple of years and he wanted me to do that full time and to just stay in Indiana. And I was like, man, I want to do jiu-jitsu though. I want to fight and do jiu-jitsu. That's way cooler. And he was like, yeah, but there's not a lot of money in that. You know what I mean? Unless you're the best in the world, it's really hard to get to. And, I just believed in myself. I was like, dude, I'm going to move out to San Diego and I'm going to find a way to make this my career, whether it's teaching or competing or whatever, I'm going to do it. And now he's stoked. He thinks it's awesome that this is what I do for a living. He's super proud of me.
And we'll talk about San Diego in a moment, but what do you think, and take a moment to think about this, but what do you think was the best advice that you got from your dad?
As far as jiu-jitsu or in life?
I'll do both.
Either.
If you like.
Yeah.
Either. Yeah.
Oh man. He's giving, dude, I can come up with something new every day. My dad blows my mind all the time with like philosophy on life or
Give me one. Come on. Drop one.
Squeeze the neck.
Right back to that.
They've always told me neck. That's one thing,
Let me ask you. Let me ask you when your dad's trying, when you were younger, even before your teenage years, when your dad was trying to show you things, what was going through your mind? Because like I'm showing my son stuff, and after just a couple minutes, and we just had Amal Easton on, who was like, yeah, I show my kid something, and he's like, Gordon Ryan can show me how to do that on a video. And Amal's like, I'm standing right here in front of you. We could do this together.
Yeah.
What was going through your head back then and reflecting on it? Do
now,
what do you think?
Are you before I started training?
Yeah. Like
really?
Legit. Like, yeah. So you're in the barn with your dad and his buddies,
okay.
And he's like, hey, you're throwing these punches wrong. Pivot your foot. No, you didn't pivot your foot right. And he's trying to get you to do technique properly.
Yeah. So 90% of the stuff I would listen to him and I'd be like, okay, he knows best. Like my dad, I would watch my dad beat up other grown men all the time. Like, you know what I mean? So I knew he was a tough dude and he could fight. I remember going to jiu-jitsu tournaments with him when I was a little kid, long before I even started joining him in the training sessions in the barn. And I'd watch him beat up dudes at jiu-jitsu tournaments too. He would like do expert divisions and just go in there and choke guys out. And so I was like, okay, this guy is obviously, he knows what he's doing and he's my dad. I look up to him. So I would listen to him. I remember we got in an argument one time in the barn because I don't know if I watched like a video on YouTube or what, but I saw it in movies. I saw a couple movies of guys throwing high kicks in some martial arts movies, Never Back Down. I think I saw it in that. So I started throwing high kicks at the heavy bag. And one night my dad was like, hey man, you shouldn't really be doing those. You should be throwing low kicks. He's like, the high kick is high risk, but high reward if it lands, but it might not land. He's like, why not just do low kicks? You can like break someone's leg with that. If you kick them 10 times, they won't be able to walk anymore. And then they're easy to beat up. And I just wanted to learn high kicks. I was like, well, I want to learn high kicks. Like that. Why are you trying to stop me? And my dad was like, I'm telling you, you got to listen to it. I've done a lot of kickboxing. Low kicks are super effective. High kicks, you have to have perfect timing. You got to have the flexibility. Like it takes a long time to get good at those. You should really get good at low kicks first. And I just did not want to listen to him. It just like annoyed me that he was trying to stop me from doing them. But later, I'm like, yeah, he was right.
Yeah,
But
I think I just got to be
feel like-
patient then, right?
I feel like that happens to every instructor at some point, whether father, son, or just, instructor in general. Like I I had this experience with one of my students for, I think, I don't know, 6-8 weeks. Like I'm, guiding them with the underhooks from half guard. Like, you just have to wedge in.
You're not talking about me, are you?
They're doing. We'll remain nameless here, okay? But and they're doing their thing. Like they are plowing through it. They're doing their thing. They're clearly not listening. And then one day, I'm watching, and he does and then he looks straight at me, and we connect. And I didn't say anything. He knew. I knew. Boom, life happened. I was like, We are stubborn. We are just stubborn as humans. We are so stubborn.
Yep.
San Diego, life is good. Doing jiu-jitsu for living. Teaching every day. What makes your life what it is today? Like what takes you every morning? What makes you get up?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things, right? I want to make my family proud. My niece and nephew kind of had it tough their first few years of life with the issue with my sister, and so they're a big part of my motivation. Honestly, I want to show them that it's like they're kind of, from their life, they're getting to see two ends of the spectrum: someone who completely lost control of their life, which is their mom, and then me, who I'm flourishing and I'm doing exactly what I want. I'm not working a job that I hate. I'm doing exactly what I love every single day of my life and becoming successful from it. And that's like what drives me. I just want to keep doing that and show them that they can do whatever they want. They can do, whatever makes them happy. They don't have to conform and get a regular job or stay in Indiana. If they want to, they can, they can take life wherever they want. And so that's a big part of my motivation. But, and man, I just love what I do. I'm obsessed with it. I love martial arts, and it's just my favorite thing in the world. It's almost annoying how much I think about jiu-jitsu and fighting and stuff. Like, I wish I could just get it out of my head sometimes, but I can't. Like, I'm always thinking about it.
Oh,
so
I've said this on the other episodes, but like there's so many times where I'll go to the store to buy something, like grocery shopping, and I forgot why I'm here because I'm thinking about jiu-jitsu, or like I'm walking on a treadmill and I trip over because I was thinking about that sweep that I'm trying to like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it's so embedded, at least in my head, and then my OCD is not helping. Like why are you laughing?
I don't have that problem.
That's because you're not on a treadmill.
No, absolutely not. What's the point of that? What's the point of that?
So would you say that you are at the point in your life where success is defined by where you are today? Would you find yourself as a point of success?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But I'm not done. You know what I mean? I feel like I still have a lot that I want to accomplish. But at the same time, I go, man, I'm doing really good for myself. This is like the first time in my life that I have, a job that I genuinely love with all my heart. I can't get enough of it. I love teaching. I have such a good time when I'm here at the gym, man. My students are awesome. All the other instructors here at Legion, we're all good friends. And I just feel like I'm in a really good place. And yeah, I do feel like I'm successful. I'm not hurting for money anymore, which is a really big deal. It's like, so yeah, I feel like I'm in a really good place, but it got a lot more to do as competitively and in other ways too. I want to start my own business. I actually want to start my own podcast here soon too. So,
well, no,
cool.
that would be
I think you'd be
phenomenal.
good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
You said that you love teaching, and you mentioned this multiple times throughout this conversation today. If you had to pinpoint one thing about teaching that makes it so amazing, makes it so awesome, what would it be?
When I see people get good, when I see, especially at tournaments, man, like, it's funny. as a coach, you go to I just went to one this weekend and coached a bunch of our students. And, sometimes it can like break your heart. You see something silly happen that maybe shouldn't happen, but it feels so good when, one of my purple belts, his name's Alan. We go to this tournament this week. It was a Naga. I went and coached at a Naga this weekend. And a couple weeks ago, we just went over butter half, which is like butterfly, like half guard, but with the butterfly hook in. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And we were going over leg entries from there, leg lock entries all week. He goes into the tournament this weekend, and goes right into butter half and, gets underneath this guy, just like we went over, and hits a beautiful knee bar. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's the best feeling in the world. I love that. It's like, there's nothing better aside from winning myself, competitively. That's like one of my favorite things ever, is when, one of my students goes in and just kills it with like a technique that I showed them, or, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Like that point of satisfaction that you're almost like living through them. That the point that you see it, that they got it. It's smooth. It clicked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's definitely a big point for many instructors that we've had here on the show. So, life is good. Everything is going well. You love teaching. Oh damn, we've been at this for
we're at an hour, yeah.
Almost an hour. Listen, before we start wrapping this up, what we do end of each episode is this cool thing where our previous guest asked a question, but he had no clue that you will be answering it. So it's kind of a question in the blind, if you will. Gary's going to take a lead on this, and it's always crazy interesting wrap up to the conversation.
Yeah, so I told you it was from somebody who's been around for a while, and this is from Roy Harris, who's out your way. And he wants to know, where do you see jiu-jitsu 10 years from now?
I see it being a lot bigger than what it is now. I think, I think it could be a mainstream sport in 10 years from now, man. I think we're going to start seeing more and more academies all over the U.S. and all over the world. I think that there's going to be a way for people to compete only and make that their full-time job, just like athletes in the NFL or the UFC or anything else. I don't know how much they'll be getting paid, but I think that that's definitely that's what it's looking like right now. I think more and more people are starting to open their eyes to the sport and seeing how awesome it is, and it keeps growing. So yeah, it's heading in an awesome direction.
Let me ask you this, and some consider this controversial question, but do you think the mainstream is actually good for jiu-jitsu? Many consider the mainstream is going to water this down, is going to lock down a lot of rules and other things. Other think that exposure is beautiful, allowing to grow. What's your view on this?
There's definitely going to be some watering down. There's going to be some McDojos. There's going to be some fake black belts, if you will. Mm-hmm. People who aren't legit, maybe got their black belts too early. There's going to be a lot of that. But I still think it's going to be good. The real ones are always going to rise to the top. They're always going to be up there. You know what I mean? You can't fake this. Competitively, you can't fake it. There's, no ifs, ands, or buts. You got to be good if you want to compete against good guys. And that's that. It doesn't matter, how much it waters down around that, as long as it keeps going in an upward trajectory where, people are getting paid and more eyes are on it. I think that's always more of a good thing than a bad thing.
Do you think gi will disappear?
No, I don't think it'll disappear. I think it will become way less popular, though. Maybe in 100 or 200 years, it might disappear. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. I think it's going to become less popular. Nogi's, I think, the new thing that excites everyone because it's closer to a fight. Gi's just too confusing. Casuals can't watch a gi match and know anything that's going on. I can. I like a good gi match. You know what I mean? I love watching a good match in the gi. But a casual can look and see, oh, this guy's back and he's squeezing on his neck, or this guy's cranking on this dude's leg. This can't be good. That's, I think it's so close to a fight just without punches or kicks, So I think no-gi's going to definitely outgrow the gi, but I think it'll always be around.
I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why ADCC is so popular and IBJJF it's not growing as fast. I'm not saying it's not growing, but it's not the same rate. I mean, it seems like ADCC is just exploding in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the kids. We'll see what the kids are doing, right? We got kids demanding no-gi.
Yeah.
Little kids that want, and so, yeah, I think, I don't know. I hope it's cyclical. I hope it comes back around to gi, but,
who the hell knows?
Who knows?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, listen, as long as we can continue doing this, that's the bottom line.
Yep.
Listen, before we wrap this up, anybody wants to connect with you? Anybody wants to reach out to you? Where are you at? Websites? I mean, obviously you teach at Legion, but where can our listeners find you?
At Sloan Clymer on Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me. That's what I'm most active on. Yeah. And like I said, I plan to start a podcast here pretty soon. The next couple weeks, actually, we got all the equipment for it, and we're going to set up a little studio in one of the back rooms here at Legion for it. And so looking forward to that. I still don't know what I'm going to call it yet, though. That's one of my biggest
What's the focus?
hang-ups.
What's the focus on the podcast? What are you going to? Are you aiming towards the guests, or is a competition, or what's your focus?
I plan on doing solo episodes and having guests on. It's going to be mainly around martial arts, jiu-jitsu, fighting. I'm sure I'll go astray from time to time, but that's the main goal.
Good.
Just talking about what I.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll definitely share that as life as you get closer to it, as you're getting it off the ground, and obviously we'll be listening from the sidelines. It's always good to have good conversation. Why are you laughing? This is serious conversation.
Why you just, man, go back to Boston, will you?
This is what we do. We pick on Gary, okay? That's why in the beginning I said you guys had an opportunity to pick on me for my coffee, and you didn't. So
I'm just tired of embarrassing you in front of our hundreds and hundreds of listeners. So I thought I'd take it easy on you today.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So,
well, I appreciate your easy, candid approach.
No problem.
Well, it was great having you. Great chatting you. What a beautiful life. Very inspiring from everything that you have accomplished and you have done. We'll definitely share all the links in the show notes. And I always say, if you are in the Chicago area, make sure you stay in touch, and I would love to have you at my academy.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to come through sometime. Thank you for having me on. It was fun talking to you guys.
All right.
Cool. Great, man. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. Peace.
Let's wrap
All
this
right.
up. Later.
Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.